Hello and welcome to another edition of Issues with Jide. Here we'll talk about actions and inactions of those who shape our political and national landscape and how these impact us positively or otherwise. I'm Ibrahim Shita. Today on the show, Nnamdi Kanu begs federal government, says, please, let's settle. In the course of the program, we take your questions, but first subscribe to our YouTube channel and drop your questions in the comment section. It's important to mention that we can only read comments with human names and the ones based on the subject matter. I have joining me via Zoom the maestro himself, Babajide Kolade-Otitoju. Good to see you again, BKO. Right, BKO, can you hear me?
BKO, can you hear me?
Okay, now.
Right, I just said good to see you. I just welcomed you to the show. So
thank you.
Right,
let's get right into it. The detained leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, says he's open to prospects of negotiation with the federal government. Mr. Kanu's lawyer told the court that his client is open to exploring a settlement with the federal government under Section 17 of the Federal High Court, the Federal High Court Act. Way to go, BKO.
Yes. I've always wanted that, and for the past 2 years, I've been asking for that. There are those who think that I do not like the Southeast. I do not like our friends from the Southeast. But I would say there's no Nigerian on TV. There is no Nigerian on TV who has consistently demanded that there should be a negotiated settlement in the conflict between Nnamdi Kanu and the federal government. I have always demanded for that. I've been very consistent. And I'm very sure that no Nigerian journalist on TV has demanded as much as I've done that Nnamdi Kanu that the federal government should negotiate with Nnamdi Kanu with a view to freeing him. But I've also said repeatedly that the settlement cannot be on Nnamdi Kanu's terms, that the government would have to give some conditions that Kanu has to agree, for example, to give up armed struggle against his country. Kanu has to stop doing anything that is treasonable or encouraging people to take to violence. And I'm convinced that if Kanu will agree to give up armed struggle against his fatherland, then there is nothing wrong in looking for an out-of-court settlement on this matter. I have consistently demanded for that. And I also said recently, when Nnamdi Kanu granted an interview in court, where he was saying that if he was released, the minute he's released, the violence in the Southwest will stop. That is because he's in detention, that some little fries are running around instigating violence and causing the deaths of people. I said at that time that this indicated that Kanu was gradually softening up his position, that Kanu was gradually showing signs of someone prepared to give up his struggle in exchange for peace, because he spoke that day. And when he said that subversive actions against the government were being carried out by some people, all because he was not around, I almost didn't believe that it was Nnamdi Kanu that was talking. At that point, I felt, look, this is a clear sign that Kanu's position had changed. He is no longer the stoic tough-talking and avant-garde secessionist campaigner that we had become accustomed to. I also said that following from what Nnamdi Kanu did when Senator Ifeanyi Ubah and Eze Chukwuemeka, the traditional ruler of Enugu Aguleri, Ogugad, which is the Ile-Ife of the southeast, which is the source of the Igbo race. When they visited him in detention, in the DSS detention facility, Nnamdi Kanu agreed to out-of-court settlement. I mean, Nnamdi Kanu agreed not to out-of-court settlement. He agreed to put an end to the sit-at-home that he instituted in the first place. You know, sit-at-home was in response to his arrest and detention. But Nnamdi Kanu put an end to the whole idea of sit-at-home the moment that the moment that Ifeanyi Ubah and Senator Ifeanyi Ubah and Eze Chukwuemeka approached him. He agreed to put an end to sit-at-home in the southeast. Not only that, Nnamdi Kanu also, he put it in writing. He put it in writing that in writing so that people will believe that it came from him. That from that moment there will be no sit-at-home in the southeast. So that was another sign for me that Nnamdi Kanu was prepared for peace, was prepared to give up his struggle in exchange for peace. And I will encourage the government to explore out-of-court settlement with Nnamdi Kanu, because I do not see what benefit will derive ultimately from continuing this trial. And Nnamdi Kanu too has seen clearly that he cannot defeat the Nigerian state. He cannot defeat the Nigerian state in this court battle and even in an armed struggle. So look at it this way. He wanted the court to grant him bail. His bail application was rejected. He also wanted the charges against him dismissed by the court. Again, the court refused to dismiss the charges. Remember, he won his case, the case he filed over his rendition from Kenya. He defeated the federal government in the Court of Appeal. It was thought that from that moment he would be released from detention. But in spite of winning that case, Nnamdi Kanu was not released. The federal government proceeded to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, yes, the fact that you won your case bordering on an infringement of your rights and your illegal abduction from Kenya to be detained in Nigeria does not mean that the treasonable charge filed by the Nigerian government against you should be dismissed. So rather than release him from detention because he won his case, the case of illegal rendition from South Africa, because the truth is, the way he was brought from South Africa went against international law. Before you can bring a fugitive like that to your country to face justice, he must go through an extradition trial. He did not go through an extradition trial. The agents of the Nigerian government got hold of him from his hotel and brought him forcibly to Nigeria to face trial in a way that is against all international conventions and the African Charter and the UN Charter on human rights. But it was not enough to get him out of detention. Now, his latest struggle was to have the treasonable felony charges against him dismissed, but the court refused. He also wanted bail. The court refused to grant him bail. He also pleaded that he would want to be put under house arrest rather than staying in the DSS. Again, that was another sign for me that he was already softening up his position. He said he was prepared to be put under house arrest instead of being in DSS custody. That again was rejected. So facing clear frustration in court, seeing clear signs that the way the case is going, he will not be freed. He will not defeat the federal government in court.
Yeah.
His lawyer then told the judge that since he could not have the court excuse itself from his trial based on the matter of jurisdiction, because he wanted the court to disqualify itself on the basis of jurisdiction.
Yeah,
but the court assumed jurisdiction, and a lawyer, Jimako, his lawyer said, well, in view of this, since the court assumed jurisdiction and would want the case to go on, because everything that he had done to stop the case from going on, he has failed. So there is nowhere else to go. He could see that in terms of that matter, the future was bleak. So his lawyer then decided that it was best to approach an out-of-court, explore the possibility of an out-of-court settlement. His lawyer said in court, and was quoting Section 17 of the Federal High Court Act, in any proceeding, the court may promote reconciliation among parties and thereto, and encourage and facilitate amicable settlement thereof.
That's right. So
Section 17 of the Federal High Court Act provides for out-of-court settlement. The lawyer Jimako said that, and in response, federal government lawyer Adegboyega Awomolo said, well, I do not have the instruction of my client to go for out-of-court settlement. The clear mandate that I have is to prosecute Nnamdi Kanu.
That's correct.
He then advised Aloy Jimako, Nnamdi Kanu's lawyer, that if you want to continue, if you want to explore out-of-court settlement, the best person to approach is the Attorney General of the Federation.
Yeah, that is
who has the power by law to discontinue any criminal matter.
That's right.
Without recourse to anyone.
That's right.
And that was the same thing that Justice Binta Murtala Nyako said. That look, as a judge, I'm not opposed to out-of-court settlements, but I will advise you to approach the Attorney General of the Federation. He is the one who can take that decision after speaking with his boss, the president, and after getting the all clear from the president. So he's the one who has the power to discontinue trial.
That's right. This is how to come in.
This is where we are on this matter. It is jarring news to me, and I think there's an opportunity there. Nnamdi Kanu clearly wants to make peace now because he has seen that he cannot defeat the Nigerian state in this matter, and he's been in detention for too long, denied even access to some of the things that ordinarily are at the tip of his fingers. So this is the situation, and I encourage the president to look at this. Of course, it will be difficult. I admit that it will be difficult because the government will look at what is in this for it. Can the release of Nnamdi Kanu cause an end to sit at home? Can the release of Nnamdi Kanu put an end to the senseless killings going on in the southeast? The other day, they went to Nnewi to kill innocent people. So the government will ask these questions. The government would want answers to these questions. How influential is Nnamdi Kanu at this stage? Can we guarantee that his release will put an end to this madness going on in the southeast, this killing of innocent people in the name of sit at home and in the name of Biafra agitation? Perhaps the fact that Simon Ekpa, the so-called Prime Minister of Biafra in exile,
that's right,
his decision to form a faction, his decision to break away from IPOB has clearly complicated matters. If Nnamdi Kanu had adopted this posture about 1.5 years ago, many would have believed that his release will bring an immediate end to killings in the southeast. But clearly, many people are not even taking Nnamdi Kanu's instructions. They are listening to Simon Ekpa, and even when Nnamdi Kanu announced that he had cancelled sit at home, he wrote in his own hand to cancel it.
Yeah.
Sit at home is still being enforced by cultists, brigands, and some undesirable elements who are listening to Simon Ekpa, who are being brainwashed,
that's right,
and see in the sit at home an opportunity to perpetuate criminality.
I need to confirm if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Oh, good. So, speaking about, because just like you said, there have been several calls and orders for Nnamdi Kanu's release. For instance, the United Nations had asked the Nigerian government to immediately release Nnamdi Kanu unconditionally and pay him adequate compensations for the arbitrary violation of his fundamental human rights. In fact, several elders, just like you said, from the southeast met with the government of Buhari, but this didn't yield any results. Are there any indications, looking at the current situation, are there any indications that this current administration might do anything different from the Buhari regime regarding Nnamdi Kanu's case?
It's difficult to say with finality because, political leaders are influenced most of the time by people around them. I would want Nnamdi Kanu released with conditions. And if he agrees to those conditions, why not let him go? This is my position. But the way I feel may not be how the National Security Advisor feels. The way I feel may not be how the service chiefs feel. The way I feel may not be how the ministers and some of the kitchen cabinet, members of the kitchen cabinet of the president feel. But I remember vividly that in the course of his campaign in the Southeast, Mr. President promised to explore opportunities for peace between the agitators for Biafra in the Southeast. He said clearly that he will explore a a negotiated peace between agitators in this, with agitators in the southeast. I remember clearly. So if the president said that at that time that he would explore amicable or peaceful resolution of the crisis in the southeast by talking to the agitators, I still think that it's a possibility that the president may be thinking along that line. But between when he was campaigning and now that he's president, perhaps he has seen a few things that may have made him to change his mind. So I can't say at this point that what the president said during the campaign,
that's right,
he will be eager to do it.
That's right.
It may, the security report may point to some dangers involved that could result from him making good that promise. The people around him may be opposed to it, and he may be willing to listen to so because if he releases Nnamdi Kanu and things go wrong and he does not achieve anything from the release, the blowback will be bad, and people will blame him. If things degenerate, people will say, oh, he's taking a very bad decision. But for me, in most conflicts, the protagonists often end up around at a round table where these issues can then be permanently resolved. I've given examples in the past, including even South Africa. You know, the conflict between the ANC and the Nkata Freedom Party when they were beheading one another, setting one another ablaze. Eventually, the political settlement came and the killings stopped immediately. So these things happen. There are times when you just have to realize that court action may not bring peace.
That's right.
And you can pursue peace through other means. So I don't know whether the president will agree to this. Right. President Buhari was also appealed to by the late Bazulike Amechi to release Nnamdi Kanu, and he promised him that he will handle the situation, he will ensure that Nnamdi Kanu behaved himself. But President Buhari didn't release Nnamdi Kanu. He said that the trial should continue, that it was not in his hands, that the case was already in court. But we know that even if a case is in court, the president can order the Attorney General of the Federation to go and terminate the prosecution. It happens. We saw President Tinubu, President Obasanjo use that power in the past. You know? So
that's right.
If we are talking about political decision, this one is a case that has already been politicized, and a president may decide that, okay, in the interest of harmony, in the interest of peace in the Southeast, let's have this person released. After all, Obafemi was in prison, you know, jailed, accused of treason, and the Gawan regime released him and even made him a minister. So it's possible for the president to.
That's right.
Seeing that Nnamdi Kanu appears to be remorseful now, or be showing signs of remorse, take a good look at the matter and say, okay, let's leave this man alone.
That's right.
At 56, a man who feel that, look, age is catching up with him, and that some level of rascality associated with youth is not meant for someone like him. So I really want this opportunity for negotiated settlement to be explored, It is my wish to see that happen.
That's right, Mikhail. So let me take some comments. Abayomi Abi says, after all the bullying and blackmail, now he wants to negotiate. Federal government must never negotiate with, well, I won't call the word he used. He said he must face justice and pay for his crimes against the country to teach others. Ismail Akinkumi says, Babajide has been clamoring for political solutions to Kanu matters for a long time. And I'm agreeing with BKO. God bless BKO, God bless Southeast, and God bless Nigeria. Nelson Adefe says, BKO, I disagree with your position of releasing Nnamdi Kanu, whose action has taken lives, exchanged fire with Nigerian armed forces, stagnated Nigerian economy, and did a lot of harms it caused. Destiny Ifeanyi says, even if he begs to find his way out, he must continue. No retreat, no surrender. That's someone saying that Kanu must, continue in that stride. Mohammed Sabi says, Babajide Nnamdi Kanu will never be released. He must face the music. Banji Okesofo says, well, I can only hope that Kanu is sincere. Nothing is as good as out of court settlement. Bola Mary, just few to go, says, a treasonable felony case is not dismissed based on sentiments or emotions. It's a serious case against the state. He must face the consequences of his action. Ibrahim Alausa says, I believe IPOB should demonstrate good faith by ending the sit-at-home protest, which could encourage the federal government to consider releasing him. And Uba Aik, the last I'll be taking for now, says, the only way out is freedom of Biafra in peace. We Igbos are done with Nigeria, both in spirit and soul. So there are so many people who are saying Nnamdi Kanu should not be released. There are others who are saying, no, even if he's released, they would not want to, back down on their secessionist agenda. So there are some who are of the views that Kanu should never be released because there are audio evidences of his clearly calling for attack on Lagos State public property and even allegedly directing his foot soldiers to attack Governor Sanwo-Olu and the infrastructure using unprintable words. And they argued that how would doing an out-of-court settlement serve as a deterrent to others? BKO.
Yeah, they have a point. Adufe and others, they really have a point. People have lost their lives as a result of this struggle. But there is no struggle that is easy. And even in countries where we've had negotiated peace, it didn't mean that people didn't die. It didn't mean that those people didn't commit treason, So it's just like saying because the Niger Delta militants sabotaged Nigeria so many times, even caused loss of lives, that there should not be amnesty program. But we came up with amnesty program. Some people felt, oh, that was rewarding evildoers, rewarding violence. But at the end of the day, Nigeria's oil output increased. Because what they were doing to us at that time was terrible. But the oil output increased as a result of the Niger Delta militants stopping their campaign at that time, stopping their acts of violence against Nigeria's oil installations. So it's a matter of looking at your interest in the whole thing. Can the release of Nnamdi Kanu bring peace to the Southeast? If the government is convinced that it will bring peace, of course, government will be willing to negotiate because peace in the Southeast is very, very important, I'm sure, to Mr. President. If we keep looking at what Nnamdi Kanu did, honestly, nobody will want him to be released because it's still fresh in people's memories. Some of what Nnamdi Kanu instigated, especially during the NSAS crisis. So people have not forgotten. And those audio clips are amongst the evidence that the federal government has brought against him to say, yes, you may have won the case against us about the way you were unlawfully brought to Nigeria to face trial against international law, against international convention. But you have committed treason against your country, and the facts are there. You set up a radio station, you push people to violence, you cause the deaths of people. For that reason, you have a case to answer. You must continue your trial at the Federal High Court before Justice Binta Murtala Yaku. The Supreme Court affirmed that. So, but as I've said, even in wars where people kill themselves for decades, they still will come around they sit at the round table and find peace. Israel and Egypt killed one another for years. Egypt was not even perhaps, the most formidable enemy of Israel in the whole of the Middle East. But at the end of the day, they came together. There was the Camp David Accord. They came together, and both countries have stopped fighting one another since then. So if Egypt was thinking about how many of their troops the Israelis killed during the Yom Kippur War, for example, or if Israel was thinking about how many of their troops the Egyptians killed, I'm sure they will not want to agree to this negotiated settlement. But today, both countries are at peace with one another because they decided to settle their differences without a resort to military campaign against one another. Military action. So for me, yes, Nnamdi Kanu did many terrible things against his country. But if he will agree to condition, I'm not saying release him. It will be irresponsible of me to simply say release him. We can only release him, or the government can only release him, if he agrees to conditions laid down by the government. That is the way it is done.
Yeah.
It will not be, it's not in a position of strength now to simply say, release me unconditionally. No, it will be irresponsible to release him unconditionally, and I'm not asking for that.
Right, because
if he will be released now, he has to agree.
Unfortunately, Biko, if you can hear me.
So the federal comes up with.
Biko, unfortunately, there are some that, and I would like to read these comments, and I want you to speak to, their point of view, views. Uko Pius says, Nnamdi Kanu was on live interview, or maybe the person meant live TV. And for me, he said, as the law said not to him, the narrative of this headline, I think, is different from what's transpired, sir. Let truth always rule over lies, sir. And I think the following comments also, told the same path. Maria Sele says, Kanu never begged. Okay, stop the lie, man. Ezioku Bundu says, where did Nnamdi Kanu beg? You journalists are our major problem. So this is actually talking about people who would only read headlines without reading the content of the story. So they are saying that, Biko, that the fact that we are saying that Nnamdi Kanu begged, that we are making this up, that it's a lie. He never begged. It's so clear that we are seeing example of people who would only read headlines without reading the body of the story. What do you say to this?
Now, what this is interpretative journalism. Kanu was speaking through his lawyer.
That's right.
And his lawyer is saying, look, his lawyer walked up to the lawyer of the federal government and said, please, we would like to have out-of-court settlements. And the lawyer told him, look, it's not my decision, it's the decision of the Attorney General of the Federation. Walk up to him and tell him. And the same lawyer to Nnamdi Kanu also in the court, in the presence of everybody in the court, said, look, at this stage, my client wants to settle out of court with the federal government. What is the meaning of that? This is not, he didn't say my client wants unconditional release. He said we want to settle out of court. Let us settle. Please let us settle. That's what he said. They should stop deceiving themselves. The same man granted an interview in court. Nnamdi Kanu granted an interview in court. He said, release me. If you release me, in 1 minute, these whole killings in the Southeast will stop. It's there. If you go on Google, you see there's even the video. It was our own reporter, Celestina area, that asked the question. Another journalist quickly came in. It's all over YouTube. That interview that I granted, he said all these subversive moves against the government, if I'm released, it will come to an end. That's a man preaching to them to release him. That if they release him, peace will come. And then follow that up with his lawyer in open court, quoting the Federal High Court Act that permits the courts to allow for out-of-court settlement. What does that say? So is it until he kneels down and says, gentlemen, this is what I want. Please release me. Before you know that since the decision came from him, since the one who made the offer, it means that he's the one begging for it. He's the one begging for it. Before now, he also pleaded. This is not the first time that he will beg. He also pleaded that he should be allowed to be under house arrest. That he doesn't want to be in DSS custody anymore. Yeah. He said, put me, you can keep me under house arrest. I'm ready.
That's right. That's right.
So if a man is making moves for peace, I am saying, okay, since he's making moves for peace, federal government should also extend a hand to him, but give him conditions.
That's right.
I can understand if some people would think that, oh, if he begs now, he will have given himself a bad name. But they are not suffering with him.
Exactly.
Some people have not lost their own freedom. A man has lost his freedom for 3 years. He's tired of staying in detention, and he's saying, I want to settle. I want to settle out of court.
Through his lawyer.
So through his lawyer, his lawyer is his spokesperson.
Yeah, definitely.
He has also cancelled sit at home. All those moves are moves meant to try and tell the government that, look, I'm a much better person. I'm not as stubborn as I used to be. Please look at me in another light. Stop seeing me as a violent person.
That's right.
So he's been taking those steps for some time that suggests that he is looking for peace. It's so clear. It is not until he prostrates like a lizard before we know that he's begging.
BKO, because of our time, let me just read this very last comment and then we call it a wrap. Ismail Akikumi says, Jide is asking for dialogue from the federal government, and I won't mention the name of the tribe, who wants Nnamdi Kanu to be released. We're here abusing Jide. Now, wow. And that's our show for today's edition of Issues with Jide. Special thanks to you, Babajide Kolade-Otitoju, for those insightful analysis, as always.
The real people that we should take seriously, they know that we mean well for the Southeast.
That's right.
They will not be happy to see their brother remain in detention forever.
That's right.
The real people, the hypocrites don't mind that someone has lost his freedom for 3 years. The freedom that they are enjoying, going up and down, drinking beer and womanizing, he does not have that freedom.
That's right.
If you lose your freedom for 1 day, you know what it looks like. Many of them have never been detained. So this is how people push and push people until you fall into a ditch. And when you fall into a ditch, you come out, you look around, you will not see anybody.
That's right.
This is the way of some Nigerians. But those of us who believe, who are interested in peace, we are saying, this man, consider a negotiated settlement. And I can give so many examples of people who wage war against their country, and eventually they were released from detention. So these things happen. There is not something to be bothered about. As for those abusing me, because people from the southeast who are abusing me, that is their problem. We know that it is not everybody that is sincere. A lot of them, their love for Kanu is fake.
That's right.
It's fake. Because if you genuinely like an individual, you want to see him out of his misery. You want to see him out of pain. You want to see him enjoy his freedom. If you continue to push that he should remain in detention, then you are his enemy. You are an enemy of Nnamdi Kanu. You are even an enemy of the Southeast. You are an enemy of Nigeria.
That's right. BKO, thank you so much. Thank you very kindly for your keenness of insight, BKO.
Thank you, Ibrahim. We'll do this again next week, God willing.
And thanks to you, to our audience, for keeping our company on every edition. You can see the program again anytime by subscribing to our YouTube channel, TVC News Nigeria. Click on the subscribe button to get the latest information. You can also follow us on our social media platforms at TVC News NG. I'm also at Ibrahim_Shita. On behalf of the rest of the team, I'm Ibrahim Shita. See you again next edition. Bye for now and be good.